museum for giving me an opportunity to reminisce and come up with some history that you might find interesting, hopefully. And I thank you all for coming and putting up your lunch hour to listen to an old attorney wax on and off. So, as Katie says, I'm Tom Sharp. I'm a mostly retired attorney in Steamboat Springs. You know, back in the early 70s, a folk artist named John Denver wrote a song called Rocky Mountain High. And I want to read to you the first 4 lines of that song. It was a very popular song. He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found a key for every door. I moved to Steamboat Springs Labor Day weekend in the summer of my 27th year. Coming to a place I had never stayed other than a couple of short periods of time before. Had a wife and 2 small kids. We bought a house up then the Fish Creek Falls Road. I was an associate attorney with a big downtown Denver firm that had a branch office up here in Steamboat Springs. I started the practice that weekend in the building at 4th and Lincoln, the law building that some of you have seen may have some familiarity with. I'm still there today, although I actually spend more time at home office than I do down at the building. Before I arrived, I had graduated from law school at Denver, became a law clerk, spent a year as a law clerk with a federal court of appeals judge in St. Louis. Then went to work for the largest firm in St. Louis. Then I was drafted into the Army, spent a tour in the Army, came out and went to work as an associate with a big Denver firm. And they had a branch office in Steamboat Springs, so Labor Day weekend of 1972, I moved up to Steamboat. When I came up, I joined 2 other young men, so there were 3 of us in the office. By Christmas, the other 2 guys had left. The other 2 guys had left. So I was the branch office. But within a year or so, we had hired another young attorney named Jack Black, and in 1974, Jack and I bought out the branch office and started our own firm. And that firm has had a variety of names, lots of attorneys come and go, lots of paralegals and secretaries come and go. We built the law firm up to 6 lawyers, I think 3 times. And today I'm of counsel to the firm, so I'm going to count myself, but there are 5 of people in the law firm now, and always located at the building on Lincoln Avenue. And I did, as Katie pointed out, real estate, development, banking, water law, special district law, estate planning. But as a result of that, and being in the same place in the same town for 54 years, I had a kind of, I think, a front row seat on watching the growth and development of Steamboat Springs and the area. So I want you all to go with me on a verbal journey to a view of the town of Steamboat Springs I came to in 1972. I'm going to describe first the state and regional economy at that time. I'm going to describe a little bit of the Routt County and Steamboat economy. I'm going to give you an overview of the town and the growing Steamboat ski area in 1972. I'm going to describe a number of physical features of the town and compare those with features you see today. And lastly, I'm going to take you on a verbal walking tour down Lincoln Avenue, property by property, from the Rabbit Ears Motel to Dream Island. We're going to do that, And I'm going to be doing that from memory of what I remember seeing. Because I've been thinking a lot about this since I was asked to do this. And I had to drive it around several times to try to renew my memory. If I'm incorrect on any of these, don't blame me. It's a little faulty memory, comes with age. If we have time, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the important people in the community that were here in the 1970s, and maybe a little bit about how I dealt with them. Let's first begin with the state economy in 1972. It was robust. It was the beginning of there was oil and gas development was beginning. Downtown Denver skyscrapers were starting to go up, although most of the downtown skyscrapers you see were actually built in the early 80s down in Denver. Tourism and the ski.
I forgot to make the announcement.
It's okay. We're good.
Tourism in the ski industry was growing. Agriculture was still important up in Routt County. And I remember looking out the window of the law building that I had an office in like late September of 1972, and seeing guys on horseback driving a herd of sheep down Lincoln Avenue towards the depot to load them on to the train to ship east. So, and there were a lot of cattle being raised up in northwest Colorado and in the Steamboat area. Ag was still very important. But one thing I need to tell you is the Winter Olympic Games had been awarded to Colorado prior to 1970. I don't remember the exact date, but that was very significant for the whole mountain area. And there was some question about where they would have the Winter Olympic Games held. All of these ice skating and hockey and all of those kinds of events were going to be in the Denver area, but they needed to know where were they going to locate the alpine events and where were they going to locate the Nordic events. The alpine events, in those days, the winter sports, the Olympic tradition was to rebuild a new ski area, so you didn't have any nation having an inside edge of having practiced on the ski area. So it was going to be a new ski area. The final two competitors for the alpine was the mountain above what is now Lake Catamount. I forgot the name of it, but that mountain was a competitor with the mountain that became Beaver Creek. And the powers that be ultimately selected Beaver Creek as the location for that, so that's where the alpine events were going to be held. But it's significant that the jumping, the cross country, the Nordic, and the biathlon events were all going to be held in Steamboat. And so this was well known. Well, of course, as a result of that, there was a lot of activity in buying up land and kind of getting prepared to make money off of a place that's going to have the Olympics come to it. So I'll get to that in a second. The mountain areas were growing in terms of ski area development. Vail had started in 1982, was doing well, had not expanded further down the valley by that time, but you had Keystone that was built out of scratch. As you know where it's located, Copper Mountain that was built out of scratch. Incidentally, all the development on the bottom of Copper Mountain were on land leases. So the ranchers in that area kept their land and leased long terms, 99-year leases. I assume there's some of them still around. I'm not sure, but you had that. You had Crested Butte was just starting up. Aspen was growing. They had become well regarded internationally in hosting the 1950 FIS championships held in Aspen. So it was growing well. And of course, Steamboat was growing. Rocky Mountain Airways had a little short Dash 6 plane. It had 9 people on each side of a single row, and they flew into Steamboat Airport, Leadville, Eagle, Montrose, Wyoming, South Dakota. They were a very popular commuter airline in those days. Now, Routt County and Steamboat and all of Routt County, its economy was also robust and growing. The ski area, which had been started by locals and had local companies, local people involved, had been recapitalized at least once, but by 1969 they sold out to a company called Ling Tem Co Vat, LTV, which in those it was on the stock exchange as a public corporation, and in those days public corporations that were conglomerates had different lines of businesses was a hot thing to do. Instead of being narrowly defined with your business, to have multiple business was good. LTV was an aerospace company, made aerospace equipment. And for some reason they decided to get into the ski business. So they bought it, created a subsidiary called LTV Recreation Development Inc., RDI, sent an experienced test pilot up to be the first president of the ski area. But the most important thing is they started pouring money out at the ski mountain in 1970 and 71. First of all, they put in the gondola. So they had to build the gondola building at the bottom. They had to build the Thunderhead building up on top. They built the the gondola plaza retail building behind it, which is just brand new. I think it was fully complete when I moved in 1972. They built the original tower of what is the Sheraton. It wasn't the Sheraton at that time. We referred to it as the Dallas Palace, and it was, it was built by a local contractor. It was either completed or mostly completed. And Don Valentine, who had a company called Sunray Land Corporation, was a major influence in development out of the ski mountain in the late 60s and into the 70s and even beyond. His company called Sunray Land Company was building Ski Time Square commercial buildings, of which there were 3, I think, split by Burgess Creek, and Ski Time Square condominiums. So you had this growing development and interest out at the ski mountain, and as a result of the fact that the Olympics were coming near, others came and bought big pieces of land. A development company called Berry and Stark bought the land that Elkins had that was uphill from the swimming pool in what is now on each side of the Fish Creek Falls Road. The Fish Creek Falls Road didn't exist in its present location when I came to town. It was built about 2 years later. But they owned all of the land that they then eventually went through planning process with and developed as Willett Heights development. Next to them to the south were the 2 developers from Texas, from the Dallas area, Dallas and Fort Worth, called Rudy Mills and Bill Harvey, called M&H Properties. They had a bunch of land which they ultimately subdivided most of it. Then there was some land holding that was owned by some California investors that ultimately did a little development and otherwise donated the rest to the city of Steamboat Springs and constituted Rita Valentine Park. Rita Valentine did a great favor for the community in talking them into doing that. It happened to be the donation was right in the middle of the depression of the 80s that we had here in the Steamboat Springs, so economically the best thing, I guess, for them was to take the tax write-off. Anyway, there was a guy from Madison, Wisconsin with 2 buddies. His name was John Stone, and he came into town and he bought the Thunderhead Motel, which was the only motel at the base of the mountain other than what the LTV was building as the main hotel. And he bought the Cave-In Bar, which was on the road into the mountain. And he bought a piece of land called the Golden Triangle, which is where the Strings at the Mountain Performing Center is, and that timeshare project next to it was a big, because he planned to put in 2 towers, 1 condominiums and 1 that he called was going to be a membership deal with Lake Sport and Travel. All I can tell you about is John Stone, in the period from 70 to 73, leveraged his way up into the multi-millions. The 1974, when the nation, Colorado, and our area hit a big recession. Stock market dropped 45% that year in 1974. And he went under, was charged with securities fraud, convicted, went to jail in Wisconsin, and wrote a book called Going for Broke. And I think the library still has it. The first half of that book, or a third of that book, talks about Steamboat and his efforts and what was happening in Steamboat in that time frame. So, but there was also Hayden Power Plant was had been built. Craig, I think Unit 1 was built, and they were in the process of working on Units 2 and 3, so you had construction of the 2 power plants that were going on. And there were a couple of big land subdivisions that were going on. Woodmore Corporation, which was a nationwide corporation, had bought up 11,000 acres in what is now Stagecoach, and had taken through planning and was subdividing and selling lots as fast as they could, and built a ski area, planned to build a lake, which they didn't do, which was very fortunate because later the Upper Yampa District built it as a water storage project, not a recreation lake primarily. Another company out of Denver called Middle Park Land and Cattle Company owned land, bought land around Steamboat Lake and subdivided the heck out of those and were selling them in an A-frame that was sitting on the highway right approximately where the Yampa Valley Bank's parking lot is included. And so you could go in there and look at a bunch of maps and buy yourself a lot up in Steamboat Lake. Now, whether it had a road, water, or sewer, or electric to it was another question with both of those developments. Treehouse was the same. A couple of guys, Sasha Koftenau and his brother, had bought a big piece of land up that is now Treehouse. They bought it from Chuck Leckenby, as a matter of fact, who was the publisher of the newspaper. And they subdivided and had an A-frame on the highway, and you go in and buy lots at Treehouse. So anyway, let me give you an overview of the town boundary when I came. The town boundary on the south side was bounded by the park that is next to Rabbit Ears Motel now. That park was, and across the street was the line of the property owned by the swimming pool. That was the south boundary of town.
Wow.
Across the river, you could go across the 5th Street Bridge, and Brooklyn was within the town boundary. On the west end, at Dream Island, was the end of the property. On the north side of the highway was an A&W drive-in, and it was within the city. Beyond both of those was only Routt County. For example, the depot in the area called Fairview, that's across the highway to the southwest of here, was in the county, was not in the city. The housing from here at Oak Street and up was all in the city, it was all in the town. It was at that time it was a statutory town. And everything else was in the county. The town had a water system that for decades had been off of Spring Creek. And you see the Spring Creek little ponds that are up there and a channel. That was the water source for the town of Steamboat Springs for many decades. But in 1972, they built a diversion facility and a treatment system on Fish Creek. And then later in 1981 and 82, the city and the Mount Warner Water and Sand District, which had been created for the mountain area when it was still in the county, put together a joint deal to greatly expand the water treatment plant that you see today, which is jointly owned and operated by both entities. The town had a sewer lagoon. It was located about where you're at the end of the core trail where you have the skateboard park and the bike park. Right in that area was the town sewer lagoon. The Mount Warner District had a sewer lagoon located where there's Fetcher Pond. Fetcher Pond was the old Mount Warner sewer lagoon. And in the late 1970s, because of the problems of the quality of the treatment, the city was required to put together a better plan, and between the city and the Mount Warner district and the Treehouse district and others, the West Steamboat district that I'm going to talk about in a second, they put together and created the remote sewer plant way down the river on the south side where it's located today. So that was not the case when I came to town. As I say, the town was a statutory town and had a mayor whose name was Jim Golden, and then out of the mountain they had a resort association that had active membership of the commercial people that were out there. Two big events occurred in 1974, within 2 years after I came to town. One of them was the town board, led by Jim Golden, was far-sighted enough to see, we don't want to have the mountain grow separately and become an independent and never be part of the town. We want them to be part of the town. So they began having conversations with the resort association leaders, including the LTV-RDI president, and reached an agreement that the mountain area would put together a petition for annexation and an annexation election of all of the land, virtually all of the land, out of the ski area and all the way north, even to include what is now Willet Heights. And they put that on the ballot, and it passed. And so in 1974, so in one fell swoop, the city tripled in size. The town tripled in size. It's still a statutory town. So the town board also decided that they had some limits being a statutory town, and they are much better off being a home rule city. And you do a home rule city, you got to put together a charter proposal, put it on the ballot, and get it passed. So the town board led the creation of a charter commission of 23 people. I tried to get on it, but I was, I think, number 25 in the voting. I didn't quite make the cut. But they put together a charter and put it on the ballot, and the city voted for it. So in that period of time, they became not only tripled in size, but became a home rule city. That's very significant for the long-term effects of this, because you look at some other places in the state, such as Crested Butte, where they didn't do that, and you got the town Crested Butte, and next to it is the town of Mount Crested Butte. Separate entities, separate votes, and everything. At some other locations at Pagosa, they didn't. They never took in the Pagosa Lakes area into the town. Telluride eventually did the same. Had the same problem. Their mountain village at Telluride is a town separate from the town of Telluride. So the leaders in that early 70s of the town, and even of the ski mountain, to decide that it's worthwhile to combine, was very significant for the long term. Now let me tell you a little bit about physical features of the town compared to today. Roads. The 2-lane highway from the base of Rabbit Ears going out west of Steamboat was 2-lane only the whole way. It was also besides 7th Street, which was paved, Highway 40 was the only paved road in the area, in the town or in the area. Oak Creek, Yampa, Pine, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all gravel. And out to the south of town, the side roads, the ranch roads were either dirt or gravel. They were not paved. There were no stoplights.
No.
Anywhere in town or otherwise. There were very few stop signs. Not every intersection had stop signs. People in those days, when in the winter, when you'd have the pushing of snow by the city plows up at intersections and creating stacks at intersections, most all cars had a radio antenna, and you'd take an orange tennis ball and stick it at the top of that antenna with the hopes that when you came to an intersection that had no stop signs, somebody else would see you, so you'd kind of see each other, so you wouldn't crash. The parking along Lincoln Avenue was all angled. Okay, so that left, I mean, it was 100-foot wide right-of-way, but that just left the 2 lanes. parking on all the side streets were parallel. I mean, the parking next to my law building was the first one that turned and started permitting angle parking. We just started doing it, and I think I even went out and striped it that way so that people would do it that way. The only sidewalk, I shouldn't say only, I'd say almost the only sidewalks in the downtown core area were on Lincoln Avenue. There were no sidewalks on Oak Street, no sidewalks on Yampa Street. You just walked out in the street, is what you did. Trees. Oof. There are many more trees in Steamboat in the surrounding area than there were in 1972. You look at some pictures either at the museum or elsewhere of the town, some of them taken up like on Howelson Hill or up by the Sulphur Cave and shooting across. And other than the cottonwoods that are along the creeks, there are no trees. The only trees on Lincoln Avenue were two really nice pine trees in front of the Harbor Hotel. The Harbor Hotel had a turn in and it had a couple trees. There were no other trees on Lincoln Avenue. A lady reporter for the Steamboat Pilot named Dee Richards was a beloved lady and really loved in the community. Very active, very good reporter. And she got on the city council. I think she was the first woman that ever got on city council, I think. And so she embarked on this effort to create more trees along the streets in Steamboat. They were called Dee's Trees. And she had the city buy these trees, and you go down and get them, and plant them elsewhere. And on Lincoln Avenue, she had the city staff, of the city public works staff, put them in. So when you see all those trees on Lincoln Avenue, they're Dee's trees as a result of Dee's work. In Yampa, I live up lived up in Val Verdant and then Yampa Highlands, both of them off of the Fish Creek Falls Road. When we first bought that house in 1979, we could get out on our deck and we could see the top of the ski mountain. You could see the Thunderhead. You could see all of the runs off of the top. You could see some of the runs down below. And you had this great view. I could see the houses of all my neighbors and some in the next door neighborhood. I can't see any of that now. I can't see the neighbor's house that's on one side of me. And the trees, aspen trees, are nearly high enough to block the view of the top of the face of the ski area. I think in about 4 or 5 years, in the summertime, I won't be able to see the top of the ski mountain anymore. So, lots of trees. Signs. Oh, this looked like, Lincoln Avenue looked like South Colorado Boulevard did back in the 70s. Lots of signs, big signs, sticking out over the sidewalk, on poles located on the sidewalk. Lots of clutter of signs. I use the word clutter depending upon whether you like signs or not. If you happen to need one in your business on Lincoln Avenue, you thought it was a great idea to be able to put these signs on. Shortly after I got here, within a year, the town board voted an ordinance in that said all signs have to be much smaller, new signs, and any sign hanging more than 3 feet over the sidewalk has to come down within a year. Well, that really ticked off a lot of downtown business people. And they all got together, hired our firm, hired me, to try to fight that. So I filed a suit in the district court claiming under the federal Constitution, First Amendment, a right to commercial speech to have your sign be out and that you can't be taken from you. We went to the district court judge and successfully got a successful order agreeing with me. The city then appealed it to by then it was the home rule city, appealed it to the Colorado Supreme Court reversed. And then I appealed it. There was a couple people left that still were willing to pay to have me do it. I appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court in what's called a certiorari petition, in which you ask the Supreme Court, you say, we're not entitled to have you look at it, but we request, this is a good constitutional question, and you need to have 4 justices agree that they'll take the case, and I got 3 to agree, but I didn't get the 4th. So I never got the case taken, the signs came down or were moved from hanging out over to the front of the buildings. In a number of instances, a number were taken down. Because of that whole uproar, the city council then decided on a petition from various people to grandfather certain signs. And the 4 that I remember is the rabbit ear sign was grandfathered. Because, you know, in its day, when you could have, the sign code said you couldn't light signs anymore. But in its day, you know, the lights went back and forth on the ears of the rabbit ears. It was grandfathered. Although when the highway widened that area, they had to move it closer to the building. The space station sign, you've all seen that? That was grandfathered. The old El Rancho Cafe sign, which was there for a long time, but then when I then owned the property and released it to somebody else, and the sign was taken away. And the VFW, which had a big sign out, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to hammer the veterans. So anyway, there were some of them that were grandfathered. Gas stations. Gas stations. Eisenhower Tunnel was not finished at that time, but they were near finishing the bore. So it's still the route between Denver and Salt Lake City, the preferred route was still through Steamboat, but over a Berthoud Pass through Granby and Kremling and on. So if you, and the summer tourist activity was a major thing in those days. It has been eclipsed for many years by winter time, but in those days, summer was the big tourist season. And if you're going to have cars, and you know, coming after World War II, everybody wanted to do road trips. So you got to have gas stations and motels. Gas stations. There were 10 gas stations along Lincoln Avenue. 10. I'm going to describe them. At the corner of 3rd and Lincoln, now vacant, was a gas station. At the corner of 4th and Lincoln, which is now where the Chieftain building is, was a Standard Station across from my law building. Now has the Table 79 restaurant in it. Caddy corner from that, across the street on the north side of Lincoln Avenue at 4th and Lincoln, was a Sinclair Station owned by the Wither family. It's now a log retail building. At the southeast corner of 5th and Lincoln, next to the El Rancho Cafe, was a Phillips 66 building. That's now a building that Bruce Caplow, one of the 2 Bruce Caplow buildings that used to hold the Mahogany Grill and now has the Thai restaurant and the 5th Street restaurant. At the southeast corner of 7th and Lincoln, what is now the Breckenridge Mall, you know, where you go up a level and down a level and you got a couple of kiosks. That was a gas station. You had the space station then on the north side of Lincoln Avenue. Further down on the north side, you had Bob's Conoco, which is still in existence. Space station is still in existence. Across the street from Bob's Conoco in Caddy Corner was a Standard Station owned by Ray Barrows, and his family had they owned that gas station for a number of years. Ray Barrows was another significant figure in this community, later gone on the town board. He had 3 sons. Joe Barrows, Bob Barrows the oldest, and he was a professor at CU. Moose Barrows was second, and he was a dynamite downhiller that you all have heard the name of Moose Barrows before. And then their youngest son was Joe Barrows, who then was the city town manager, the only town manager. And that property then became, eventually today is the Victoria building, where the local barber shop is now. At the corner of 9th and Lincoln, where the new city hall is located, across from Bob's Conoco, was another gas station. And then going back on the south side of Lincoln Avenue, down at 10th and Lincoln, a building that's now called the Steamboat Social Club, I think, or whatever, sits back. That was the Yampa Valley Co-op gas station. So you had, later gas stations were created, you know, out south of town towards Rabbit Ears Basin near the debarque, and a gas station where the ski house has its gas station, a gas station that's north of the Yampa Valley Bank process, and then out west of town, a Phillips 66 little station that Leland Harms put in. Motels. Since you have a lot of summer driving tourists, you gotta have a lot of hotels. 13 of them. There was the single level motel where the flour mill apartments are now located just past the city park next to Rabbit Ears Motel. It was a single level. It was bought by shortly after I came, and by some developers from Florida who came in, doubled the size of it, built a railroad spur, brought in 3 club cars, remodeled them so they became the restaurant for the area, renamed the motel as the Iron Horse Inn, and it was operated as the Iron Horse Inn for a couple of decades till eventually the city bought it as workforce housing, which is what I believe it is still today. You had the Rabbit Ears Motel, but it was only a single level in those days. It's still owned by the same family. North on Lincoln Avenue, where the Wells Fargo Bank is, Wells Fargo Bank only occupied a portion of the building originally on the east portion of that long city block. On the west portion, which is now where that Wells Fargo drive-in, was another motel that went laterally up along 4th Street. I don't remember the name, but I remember it as being a hotel. You go over to 5th Street, heading toward the 5th Street Bridge, past the alley, and on the left are a couple of buildings that are now just office buildings. It was called the Anchor Motel. And those 2 buildings that constituted the Anchor Motel are still there today, but they're now long since been converted to commercial. Across the street from my law building was the Alpiner Motel. And the Alpiner Motel, I need to tell you, was developed and built by the barber in town, whose name was George Wood. And he was the only barber in town, but he was also doubled as an entrepreneur, and he did some residential lot development out in the county and so forth, and managed to put together a financial package and built the Alpiner Motel. So you had the Alpiner Motel. Between 6th and 7th on the south side of Lincoln was the Knight's Rest Motel. That was torn down, and what is in its current place is the Alpenglow building. But it was a big building, all one level, a drive-in, had some parking in back. And then when you came to 7th Street, if you turned right and went up a block, next to what is the Methodist Church block, let's say, it was a single level motel that's kind of shaped with a U, and after a while it became monthly rental units, and after a while it became commercial units, and I think to this day little people have little shops in what used to be that motel. The Harbor Hotel on Lincoln between 7th and 8th was 3 levels, the biggest hotel in town. We stayed in it in 1968 briefly, and again in 1971. The parking lot was on the back all the way down to the Yampa Street. It had a great restaurant on the main floor. The It and the El Rancho were trying to see which one could get the most customers most of the time. A little further down on the south side was the Bristol Motel. It's still in as a Bristol Motel. That actually was built and developed by the assistant manager for Yampa Valley Electric named F. Bristol, who was a wonderful guy. He was the engineer. I think he was the chief engineer of Yampa Valley Electric. Really a brilliant guy and a very good guy. He had a major impact on the college and the ultimate development of the college, which is another story for another day. Little further was Nordic Lodge, which was on the upper side. It only had buildings on one level. It didn't have 2 levels. They were later put in as 2 levels. And a second building. A little further was the...
Who owned the Nordic?
What?
Who owned the Nordic?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I do not remember who owned the Nordic. But a little further down was the Western Lodge on the north side. And it's the same as today, except it was only 1 level. A little further on the left side was the Yampa Motel, right next to what is the city park, the Little Toots Park. Jack Black and I bought that in 1977, changed it from a motel to monthly rentals, which pretty much trashed the building, and we sold it in 1980. I was glad to get it and glad to sell it. And then, of course, further down was the Dream Island Motel, which again also got converted to shops. Public work lots and buildings. The county shops are now on a bluff west of town. The city shops are out 20 Mile Road. But back in 1972, both of those were located within the boundary of the town of Steamboat Springs. The county shops, which included, places for their snow plows, graders, steel maintenance building, and so forth, is all where the BMO building is now. In other words, across from the county courthouse is a bank building that was originally built by the United Bank, which I was a director. They bought that land and built, the bank on there, but at the time I came to town, that was a county maintenance yard.
Wow.
The city shops were not located out. They were also within the town. On Yampa Street, past what you now call Orem, which I'm going to tell you originally was a indoor rifle and pistol range, everything further to the west there, including the building that Pete Vandekar did his backdoor sports in, was all part of the city public works yard.
Wow.
Didn't have to be as big as the county because, of course, the city was much confined and the county had to grade a lot of roads. Trailer courts. There were a lot of trailer courts. Fish Creek Trailer Park, which today still exists, as you go down past the Chamber of Commerce across the tracks, and there you have the Fish Creek Trailer Park. Trailer Haven was a couple of dozen trailers at the east end of Oak Street. Oak Street did not continue through to the Fish Creek Falls Road at that time. It dead-ended at a trailer park behind the swimming pool, and it was called Trailer Haven. That was torn down in 1974-75 when Barry and Stark did Willett Heights, and they put in the whole new road that went up there. And I should tell you that the road up to what was then called Fish Creek Falls Road was the one that you can enter now south of the swimming pool. You see a steep road that goes up to a bunch of duplexes. It dead ends, but when I came here, it went all the way up, went across, kind of got to a flatter area, went across, connected up, and then went along the same route that the present road goes. And that was I did not have a four-wheel drive car. And it was because I would work very late at night, sometimes in the early hours of the morning, trying to figure out how to be a lawyer, the one lawyer in a branch office. And sometimes I'd get out and it'd snow and there'd be ice. And I'd go and I'd try to go up that road and it'd go up a certain distance and then I'd spin out. So I'd back it down. And I'd go further down Lincoln Avenue, no stoplights, nobody else around. Take a longer run and just make that turn barely in control of the car. I hope I can get up. Didn't make it. Sometimes I made it. When I didn't make it, I know I spent 1 or 2 nights sleeping in my office, and at least 1 or 2 nights when I just went across the street and rented a room at the Alpiner. I couldn't make that corner. Westland Trailer Park was the east end of Yampa Street, all the way from the Rabbit Ears Motel, all the way to almost to Fifth Street, except for the Anchor Motel, was a big trailer park called Westland, occupied all the way down to the river, had all those trailers on the river. Wow. And that trailer park had about 100 trailers. Dream Island may have been bigger, but it was torn down in 2005, and ultimately now you see it was redeveloped and now has great big apartment buildings and development. Hilltop Haven Trailer Park was north across the street from the West High School parking lot. There was about 17 trailers in there a number of years ago when that owner, which I think was Leland Harms, proposed to sell that trailer park. The property owners bought it and subdivided it and created separate ownership of that one. Dream Island Trailer Park, of course, was still where it is today. The only difference is a few years back, the owner cut down all the trees so they wouldn't fall on trailers. Whitehaven Trailer Park, which was out past what is now the jail, and down a road. It's a long, thin piece. Yap Valley Housing Authority bought that 2-3 years ago, and has been trying to get it in a position so that the trailer owners can buy those. Sleepy Bear Trailer Park was further out on the left. West Acres Trailer Park was not in existence. It was new. It was the only new trailer park created in the 54 years I've been here. Grocery stores. 3 grocery stores inside the town. Safeway, where the post office now is, that was a Safeway building, a classic Safeway building with slanted roof. I don't know whether you've seen them in small towns all across America. It was the same architectural design. It's a pathetic design. But it was torn down. Safeway decided to move out onto the where its present location is, and they closed down the store. They actually let it be used to store travel trailers. So for at least one winter, because I know we stored a trailer there one winter. But it was then sold to the Alpine Federal Savings and Loan Association, which bought it, put together a great big building. This is in the 80s. Savings and loans were given authority to be in the commercial lending business. Most of them didn't know how to make money in the commercial lending business. Many of them went under, Alpine Federal among them. Alpine Federal went under, went bankrupt, lost the property. It was picked up by the United States Post Office, and that's why it is the post office today. Where Natural Grocers is located was the R&B grocery store, owned by a couple of local men. I'm running out of time, aren't I? It was bought by a couple of local guys, and they started that up. They went under, and Del Scott, who was the president of the bank, had direct contact with the leaders of City Market, and he talked City Market into coming in and taking over there, which they did for a while. Then they moved out to the ski area. Boys Market was, if you go have Lion Drug and go up the block from Lion Drug, there's a building that has a bunch of entries. It's got a optometrist, it's got a smoke shop, it's got I don't know what else, it's just right over there. The entry was only off of the side street, and it was a locally owned boys market. All I remember about it is their butcher was well regarded, and so a lot of housewives bought their meat there. And he had a country western band that he played in lots of locations around the area. There was only one bank in town, Rock County National Bank. Its principal location was the east half of where they are now. It had a branch office at down on 8th and Lincoln, which has the Masonic Lodge on the top level, the one below that has an art gallery and has Ben Franklin in bronze sitting out in front of it. That was their branch office, because they had been there before they went down there. But there, Del Scott, Earl Neese, Jack Springle, Howard Elliott, Chuck Kubelik, Pat McClellan, all loan officers, all wore suits every day. That was part of the requirement Del Scott had, and everybody wore suits. And other than them, the only other person I know that wore a suit every day was the mortician. There was one franchised restaurant in town, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And it's now known as Winona's. It was the only franchised restaurant in town. One airport, one daily airline service from Rocky Mountain Airlines. I should tell you one very short story, and then I'm going to wrap up here. When Rocky Mountain Airways decided to have a bigger plane, instead of just 18 people, they wanted to carry like 36 or so. They got from the Canadian manufacturer the Dash 7 plane, which could hold much more people, but needed a longer runway. town of Steamboat didn't have a long enough runway because these are short takeoff and landing airplanes, but it still wasn't long enough. So the town was beside itself what it was going to do. So they called on Bob Adams, who would be a name I would like to talk about, but I don't think I'm going to have time. Bob Adams was a miracle maker in 3 different very important projects for this town. And one of them was the airport. And what he did is he said, all right, because he owned Energy Fuels mine. And the energy mine, and of course it was a surface mine, a coal mine outside of town with huge equipment. He shut down his mine for 2 weeks, took all of the heavy equipment, brought it into the airport, erected lights so he could work 24 hours a day, and in 2 weeks, lengthened the runway sufficient for the planes to come in. And that's why it's called Bob Adams Airport to this day. All right, well, I think I'm running nearly out of time here. I've got only 5 more minutes, so I guess I can't take you all the way down. I do want to, there are a couple of things that are kind of cute to know about going down Lincoln Avenue. One is behind the bank, in the parking lot on Oak Street behind the Wells Fargo Bank, at the corner there, behind the county building, county courthouse building, in the corner where they have parking, used to be a big house that held the Tread of the Pioneers Museum. The county needed that space for parking or whatever, said to the Tread of Pioneers Museum, you gotta go. So what did the Tread of Pioneers do? They looked up and down Oak Street, and there were a number of vacant lots in those days. There were a lot of vacant lots on all of these, Yampa and Oak Street in those days. And they brought in a flatbed, lifted the building, put it on the flatbed, drove it down here, they built the foundation, put it on, so the building next door was originally behind the courthouse. The second one, I just got to tell this story, is down Johnny B. Good's building. When I came to town, it used to be a bakery, but a young guy named John Wooster had bought it, and he wanted to put in a restaurant and a bar. So he went to the city council to get or town board, to get a tavern license, liquor license, for reasons unbeknownst to me, maybe because it was next to the bottleneck building that sold liquor. I don't know exactly why. The town board said no. I mean, now town boards, they never deny liquor license, but then they denied that license. John Wooster said, well, I'll appeal that. But in the meantime, he opened his restaurant and he named it
Royal Shaft.
the Royal Shaft. You know, if that's the only thing I've forgotten in this speech, I'm amazing. So he called it the Royal Shaft and opened it without a liquor license. And it ran for a couple of years while he was appealing that case. The Court of Appeals, or the Supreme Court, I don't remember which, reversed the city and ordered him to issue it. They issued it, and as soon as he got it and opened and fixed it up, he renamed his restaurant the Sidestep. So, but anyway, I could tell you a lot more about Lincoln Avenue buildings, but I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna pass on that. Maybe sometime in the future I'll come down and take people on a walking tour through all the buildings.
Sure.
But I'd like to open it up for any of you that have any memories of that early 70s that you'd like to talk to. One other thing, that place I need to tell you about is all the side roads off of Highway 40 coming into town were all ranch roads. They were all dirt or gravel, including the road into the ski area.
Oh, yeah.
And the only building, visually, as you turned off and go in there, was a big metal building on the left called the Cave-In. And it was a big bar, big metal butler type building that had a restaurant and bar and seating up front, and then a dance floor, and then a stage. And it was a very popular bar for young people, for the ski bums that were in town, for the construction workers in town. The one thing I remember is that from time to time, they would have what was called a wet t-shirt contest, which was very popular. Unfortunately, I never was there when they had one, so I don't know, but I heard about it. Anyway, I don't know what, west of town, Let me take one more minute. I'm going to take 1 minute. West of town, along the highway, there was really nothing. There were a few houses. There was no industrial, primarily because it had no water and sewer lines.
Yeah.
Everything west of town had no utilities. Yeah. So property owners that had property along there came to me and said, can you help us get us water and sewer to our side of town? I said, sure. So we went to the town. Well, it was a whole new city by then. Went to the county council and the county board, county city council, and they said, well, we won't annex you, but we will if you create a water and sanitation district and you impose a mill levy on yourselves and you bond a bunch of money and you build the water and sewer lines. We'll provide you water, you can connect into our water system, and we'll take your sewer to our sewer plant, which is what we did on the west side of town. They said, we want you to promise, every property owner to promise that they won't oppose annexation if it ever is done, which of course many years later, many decades later, it was done. But we put in the water and sewer out west of town, all the way out to what is really the Napa Auto Parts area, or maybe even a little beyond that. I think it was about Napa Auto Parts, and up the Elk River Road a distance. So all of that growth of commercial on there was not in existence in 1972. It occurred after it had the basic utilities that would be able to support it. Well, I can't think of any other more really interesting story, but I'll answer any questions. Yes?
I just was going to mention that what was the rifle range actually was Game and Fish hatchery. Before it was a little rifle range where Aram is built now.
When I saw it, it was just a stone building. I never went in it, so I don't know what was inside. I was told it was a rifle and pistol range. What was the original building that ultimately developed as a restaurant called the Yacht Club? I should tell you, I am going to take 1 second to tell you. The guy that did that conversion, bought it and did that conversion into a restaurant, later got on the city council, and the city was in that time trying to figure out where to put the core trail, and they wanted to put it on the town side of the Yampa River through the heart of the town. But there were a lot of individual houses, and this guy led a whole bunch of people heavily protesting locating it there. So the town ultimately had to decide it to go across a bridge, get on the railroad right away, go all the way down through town, come back through another bridge, go under the railroad and come back. But it was originally intended to try to be there. But this same guy got this restaurant in place, and it was somewhat popular because he had a little bit of a deck to get on. But he noticed that you had all these cottonwood and big trees in the railroad right away across the river. So what do you do if you really want to get something done? He hired a couple of guys, and over a weekend, I think at night, with chainsaws, they went over there and cut down all the trees. Eliminated all the trees, so that you came there on Monday and you said, my gosh, we can see all of Hallison Hill and ski events and ski jumping and so forth, which you didn't before. Did he ask any permission to do that? No. Did he ask permission from the railroad? No. So, but that's how and then of course the yacht club went through several owners, and then it keeps getting developed and improved. Yes?
I heard some story that the Olympics didn't then come to
Oh,
Steamboat.
no, they didn't.
No.
Because, I know this is what I just heard, so I don't know, this could be fake news. They burned down the ski jump.
No, let me comment on both of those things. It didn't come to Steamboat because a pretty good member of the Colorado House of Representatives named Dick Lamb decided to promote the notion of rejecting the Olympics by the people of Colorado. So he put together a petition drive that got enough signatures to put it on the ballot, and I think the ballot was in November of '72, after I came. And the people of the state of Colorado voted to reject the Olympic bid. And so they didn't come here, they went back to Innsbruck, if I remember right, because they had to go somewhere. But they didn't do that. The story of the ski jump was a ski jump at that time was, the outrun was all on timbers. I mean, when they later improved the outrun, they built it up with dirt, and so you see the dirt outrun now. But at that time, it was a timbered outrun, and some people who at that time were opposing having the Olympics come because of, and the people in the state did that because the cost for a state or local communities to sponsor the Olympics was tremendous. And then after the Olympics gone, who's left to pay for the stuff? And so some unknown people decided to express their discontent by lighting a fire and burning a good part of the outrun of the timbered outrun of the ski jump. And it was not usable for I mean, if the Olympics had stayed, I'm sure they would have rebuilt as they ultimately did do. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah.
What was Bob Adams Airport called before it extended the runway?
Just the Steamboat Springs Airport.
Steamboat Springs Airport.
And I'm curious to know how many people are here today who were once clients of Tom's.
Oh.
Raise your hand. Just curious.
Bob Adams, real quickly, this is that big. The only reason that Fish Creek Falls is within the National Forest, and it's a tourist attraction that it is because of Bob Adams.
Yeah.
When I came to town, that 80 acres that constituted and contained Fish Creek Falls was an in-holding privately owned by California investors.
Wow.
Now they had allowed, I mean, it was a dirt road to get up to it and not much parking. They hadn't spent any money on improving it, but they started making noises in the 70s, in the mid 70s, to develop and cut into a bunch of home sites, the 80 acres, in such a way that it would be a private gated community up to Fish Creek Falls.
Wow.
Much like the Walton Creek Falls is today. You can't just drive in to go up to see Walton Creek Falls. It's behind gated the Storm Mountain Ranch. Well, some people got concerned about that and once again turned to the guy who was the wealthiest guy in town. He had worth tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And he said, okay, he had a cabin up Morrison Creek near Stagecoach Reservoir, up above, Morrison Creek comes in right below Stagecoach Dam, and you go up that, there's a canyon, and he had a cabin up there, but it was a cabin under a use permit from the Forest Service, because it was a Forest Service land. And he came in and he said, here's what I'll do. I'll buy that 80 acres from the California people, which for a certain price they were interested in selling. And he said, and what I'll do then is I'll do an exchange. And he said, I know the guy, Ed, that was a former state senator from Breckenridge that worked Forest Service exchanges. And so he hired him to get agreement. And he said, I'll exchange that 80 acres to the Forest Service if they give me the 160 acres that's back where my cabin is in the canyon of Morrison Creek, which they signed up to do. I think, I'm not correct this because you got paperwork with the government, takes years and so forth. I think he died, Bob Adams died at age 64 of a heart attack in New York City. I think his estate finished it up. I don't think he actually got it done before he died. But he got that done, and that's when the Forest Service got it, and they put some money into it, so that's why it's there. He also actually helped to rescue the college, but that's another story, and I clearly...
You are now.
I clearly